Well, we've been waiting for some Duke basketball roster news. Now it's coming to us. We've got some NBA draft decisions, and guys want to run it back with the Brotherhood. Let's dive in.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you so much for being here with us today on Thursday, April 17th, 2025. As Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. We talk a whole lot about Duke basketball and what's going on with their program this time of year as the Blue Devils are getting set for the upcoming season. We've got the big roster decisions that are set to be made here today and over the next few days. As Josh Cox is going to join us on the program, we're reacting to Knueppel declaring for the NBA draft and Caleb Foster saying he wants to run it back for his junior year with Duke basketball. All great developments for Duke that we'll dive into throughout the course of today's show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Like these videos, share it with your friends, as we greatly appreciate all the support that you give us here on the program. And then also, be sure to watch us each and every day on YouTube. Our show's available to be viewed there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video, share it with your friends. Again, so appreciative of all the support that you give us. So without further ado, let's bring him on into today's program. The aforementioned Josh Cox is back with us. We talked last week, man. It was such a gutting end to the season there in the Final Four, and then we're just kind of sitting there waiting. When are these decisions going to start to be made? It took about a full week, but now we're kind of getting a good frequency here with the decisions coming in. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, man, doing great, JJ. And like you said, it's been an eventful past 24 hours, really, after kind of waiting. And Duke does it. Obviously, everything they do is intentional, and the timing of how they make these announcements. I would assume that yesterday kind of broke the dam, and we will see daily announcements from here on out. So you can read into those a couple different ways, right? But it's really cool that we do have some fresh information, right, to talk about today, based on what over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, very helpful. And in some ways, we're trying to talk to the people each and every day. So let's slow it down and enjoy the process while we can in order to do that, because, you see the first Knueppel draft declaration come out yesterday, and you're expecting a few more to come as well. But respect to Duke, respect to the teammates there, that everybody kind of wants their day to be able to do things like this, right? And so if all of a sudden you went boom, 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 boom with all these draft announcements, we wouldn't get the chance to celebrate somebody like Knueppel when they do drag it out like this a little bit.
Yeah, and you got to think, for a kid like Knueppel, this is one of those days, right? You've had dreams as a kid, him playing with his brothers and growing up in the gym with his dad and all those types of things. And you don't know, right? When you're a 8th, 9th grade, probably for Khan, even a 10th, 11th, and 11th grade kid, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to declare early for the NBA draft. Right. Like, I don't know if my body's going to, grow to where it needs to be or my whatever. And now this is the reality for him. And, he'll never forget, being able to make that announcement. I do think it was, I do think it was Khan's personality and that it was short and sweet, to the point. And, if you've interacted with Khan or seen interactions with Khan, he's not rude by any stretch of the imagination, but he is very much direct and to the point. And, and then Duke is able to celebrate it. I do love the way that Duke does that with, a clip from Coach Scheyer speaking about, the season that he had and his belief in him and all those things. I think Duke does that, at a high level, as you would expect them to do.
Yeah, it was very, very simple. Forever a Blue Devil, taking the Brotherhood with me to the next chapter. It's pretty much it. And put a hashtag NBA draft there. Like, we knew what was coming, Khan, but you're right. He just wanted to make it a point there. To your point, though, about hey, I don't even know if this is going to be possible. A couple of years ago, talking about Knueppel and just speaking to, not playing on the biggest teams that were out there and not being the most sought after recruit until very late in his process. You could probably go back to those, freshman, sophomore, junior years of high school where he's thinking, I don't even know if I'm going to be a rotation player in college. Well, little did that young man know he would be a star at the college game leading Duke in so many ways throughout the season, the ACC tournament MVP, and ultimately helping them get all the way to the Final Four.
Well, for sure. I mean, and this class was all about Cooper Flagg, right? That's what it was all about. And then very late in this class, you had the addition of Khaman Maluach. And when that happened, it was all about, the NBA academy or that he attended there in Africa. It was about him making
he's on the Olympic team.
Yeah. So there was a lot of talk about everybody else. And then you had the local kid in Isaiah Evans, and did you see how many points he just put up in X amount of minutes? But then what you saw with Khan is the moment that guy arrived on campus and the moment they started running some 5-on-5 type of stuff, you started hearing the rumblings coming out of Cameron, and out of off campus there, hey, this dude can play. And it was, they didn't make any bones about it on the Brotherhood podcast in the offseason. Every single player they got on that podcast was asked who was standing out, and every single player, they may have mentioned other players.
Yeah.
Every single player's consistent answer was Knueppel. And then, you saw him in the beginning of the season. Duke obviously played some incredibly difficult matchups in November, early December. And you really saw Khan maybe struggle a little bit to kind of figure out, hey, if I'm going against the taller, longer, more athletic guys, I can't necessarily I've got to adjust. And from what you saw in those early games compared to as he progressed in the ACC play and into the tournament, I mean, he turned into a savant, man, on the court. He knew exactly where he wanted to get. He figured out how to use his body well. He became a great defender. And, I mean, you can't say enough about, honestly, the player development that Duke was able to do with him just from November until March.
Yeah, so there you have it. I mean, what Khan was able to do day by day turned himself into a likely top 10 pick at the next level, and super excited to see him be able to start that chapter of his career. And we'll see who else kind of joins him in the process of going on to the draft and to the next level. We know Caleb Foster is making the decision to return. We'll take a quick timeout here today and continue our conversation after this break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Our show today is brought to you by our friends over at Upwork. Are you scaling your business? It requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts that are ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including AI, IT, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Finding the right talent is so critical. If you need help with the marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with the freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Fast and easy hiring process, and its posting a job is free and simple. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com, Upwork.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Upwork is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, we keep this thing going. Josh Cox is here. We're talking about Knueppel's decision as well as Caleb Foster. Before we get to Foster here in just a second, everything you're seeing, Josh, people should expect Knueppel to be one of these top 10 lottery type picks, right, when we get to the draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the NBA obviously puts a premium on being able to shoot the basketball just by the way analytics is run. You got your Boston Celtics.
He can do that.
He can definitely shoot the basketball. So I think that, and then I do think that, there was a lot of, I would basically maybe call it hype around the top 10 lottery pick type thing early in the season. But I think he solidified that in the fact that now, if I'm an NBA team, I don't necessarily think he's going to be a huge liability on defense, right? I also understand that he can do more than just shoot the ball. And, you see a little bit of hopefully he ends up being, maybe better, but like a Max Strus in that, hey, yeah, everybody knows he can shoot, but you let Max Strus get loose, he can also dunk on you, in the same vein. And so I think that's where Khan has worked himself into. And he's going to be valuable, man. And in a weird way, because he's probably not going to be like a top 7 or 8 pick. he could wind up on one of these like playoff teams and really be able to, find himself in a great situation and be highlighted, earlier on in his career.
Yeah, make an impact for sure early. And I'm thinking back to, his jumping ability. We saw it very early in the season, like in that exhibition game against Arizona State, where he jumped up and met some people at the rim. I wouldn't be surprised if early in his NBA career, he reminds people again by surprising them with his athleticism and able to do that. And then just the highs and lows of a season itself. Let's not forget, this is still the same player who went 1 for 16 combined against Kentucky and Kansas. And people were very curious, okay, is he going to start to fall back down to reality, or what's the situation going to be there? No, he absolutely continued to excel and elevate his game throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, and I think from literally the time they got back to wherever he went after the Final Four loss until the draft combine, during the season, these guys are on obviously a workout regimen, but it's also with the fact that they're playing a ton of games in mind. And I know Duke is like, there's give and take there, right? With like what you can do. Well, from last week until the NBA combine, he's going to be working on his body. He's going to be working on his quickness. He's going to be working on his, and you got to think these kids are 18, 19 years old. Like, human bodies are still in the development mode.
Right.
And like, so what you're hoping is that, his combine numbers are there as well to go with the eye test. And like, those things come together, and maybe we are talking about a top 7, 8 draft pick, depending on how those things play out. And so, I think it is interesting to see these guys and the amount of attention to detail they're able to give their bodies between the time the season ends and the time that they're actually, being basically interviewed, right, for their job in the NBA.
Incredibly impressive stuff from this Duke basketball team and from Knueppel throughout the course of the season. Best of luck to him. He is forever a Blue Devil and always going to be a part of the Brotherhood moving forward. All right, speaking of the Brotherhood, we've got kind of the Brotherhood podcast host, Caleb Foster's in the chair. He's returning for his junior season. Catch us up to speed on kind of how this happened and how the news broke, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I mean, Caleb Foster, was the host of the Brotherhood podcast throughout the entire year. And for that to be the platform that they allow him to announce on is really cool. I love that Neil's also on there with him for this episode. I think Neil Begovich is great as well. And so I thought that was really cool. But, speaking of that platform, and if Duke fans, I'm assuming if they're consuming Locked On Blue Devils, they also at least casually consume the Brotherhood podcast as well.
Would be a wise assumption.
You heard Caleb speak on multiple occasions about his commitment to Duke, because he would ask other players about, why they chose Duke. And it would always come back around to Caleb and Caleb's, commit to being a Blue Devil. And, what you really saw was that rang true. And while there were ups and downs and hills and valleys throughout this season for Caleb Foster, well documented, I believe there was that thread of like loyalty to being a Duke guy, and his dream of being a Duke guy, and his dream of the Quinn Cooks and the Nolan Smiths and, that vein of player and guard at Duke. And that ultimately won out, because I'm sure we'll talk about it. There were obviously times throughout this season where, we all thought even that Caleb Foster's time in Durham was coming to an end.
Yeah, and it didn't. He stuck through the process, and he was able to get the job done as a new Duke basketball, or coming back for his junior season, because there were some tough games. He started the season as a starting point guard, and the next thing you know, it's Sion James who emerges. Duke clearly able to improve. Credit to Jon Scheyer and the staff for making that decision to pivot, and then Caleb Foster to still stay in it and in the grind, right? Like, not that you're our starting point guard, we're not going to make a change like this, even though it's better for the team. No, they made the decision that was better for the team. And Caleb Foster, being the Duke guy, rode along the rest of the season and did his best to contribute when he could.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it was the Wake Forest game or what game it was at the end of the season, but he got a DNP.
Yeah.
Randomly at the end of the season. And it was kind of like, so, historically, and this is not, I don't believe this is even speculation at this point, because it's really been the way it's happened. If you see a former rotation guy, get a random DNP late in the season, it's typically because earlier that week he informed the coaching staff that he was going to be entering the portal when the portal opened at the end of the year. Right. Like, I think like that's typically what happens. And so I think Duke fans that, reacted to that DNP, I kind of think they were justified. Like, that's kind of what we've seen. Obviously, in this case, it wasn't true. And what you saw in the postseason is Caleb Foster carving out a role, not giving up on who he is as a player and not giving up on this Duke team. And you saw him give great minutes. Listen, you have Duke fans all over social media. Not that the Duke fans' opinion typically matters, but you have Duke fans all over social media that are griping about Caleb Foster's lack of playing time in the second half of the Houston game. And if you rewind, 3
what
to 4
a 180.
that, it's like no way in the world are we going to have people complaining Caleb Foster playing more in the second half of the Final Four, right?
Yeah.
But they were, and that's where he worked his way back. And once again, kudos to that young man. I was able, in the locker room after the Elite Eight game, off the record, to just be able to see him real quick and fist bump him and say, like, hey, man, like, man to man, like, the way you've handled yourself this year, it's not been easy. Like, man to man, like, I have a ton of respect for the way you've handled yourself. And he was like very appreciative and acknowledged it. And I was like, life's not easy. And I'm playing a game, basically, and playing a game of basketball. And, if I can't go through a little bit of adversity playing basketball, then, like, what does that say about me as a person, basically? And, like, that's awesome, right? To hear that from a kid that's, like, got a big picture view of himself and a big picture view of basketball and life.
This, to me, feels like we're setting up for, Caleb Foster to slide into that starting point guard spot for the Blue Devils once again going into next season, considering the other moves that Duke will make over these next few weeks, and considering how well he played down the stretch, the experience that he has going back into last season. It was Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor, the only two returning guys for Duke. They were the representatives that went out to the ACC media days and the fanfare leading up and speaking on behalf of the team. I feel like the same responsibilities are going to be put on Caleb Foster's shoulders once again as the guy to try and bring the whole group together.
Yeah, certainly you could see his role, being like completely like must have, cannot get injured, got to stay.
Yeah.
Also, let's be real here. This also kind of is determined based upon, Isaiah Evans' decision and also based upon Tyrese Proctor's decision.
Right.
If both of those guys come back, I think you are going to see a little bit of a rotation back there with Caden Boozer. Sorry. Wrong Boozer. The wrong C Boozer.
We'll probably mess it up a few times this year, man.
I know.
We're letting people know early.
Exactly. It's going to happen. Yeah. You have him back there with, potentially that rotation of guys. Darren Harris returning and making that known that he's coming back as well. So I think there will be rotations back there. But to your point, I believe that Caleb proved in this postseason that, like, he can be the guy with the ball. I do think that maybe his game has got to evolve a little bit to, like, where it's not like Caleb get to the rim or bust. You know, like there's got to be a little bit more of the playmaking Steve Nash abilities there. And then I also think he's got to improve his free throw shooting. He's got to become a 75 to 80% free throw shooter to where at the end of the game, he is your best ball handler. So at the end of the game, you want the ball in his hands. You want him taking those free throws, or you're fine with it. So that'll be interesting to see as he improves. But as we saw, it wasn't at Nolan Smith. It was between his second and third season that Nolan Smith became Nolan Smith. And so, these guys, that's the beauty of these guys sticking around, is you do get to see, the progression of their game, and you do see them grow into their bodies and become men. And so Duke fans get a chance to see that with Caleb Foster.
Yeah.
And so it's a
he saw
rarity
from a teammate.
So.
He saw that jump from a teammate in Tyrese Proctor going from sophomore to junior year, and kind of the big jump he was able to make. Recently, Jon Scheyer was talking about, the jump that just a few seasons ago Wendell Moore Jr. made from his sophomore to junior year. Something about being there for a couple of years really brings them together, and they're able to take that next step. So pretty awesome stuff. All right, well, we'll take one more break here on the program today and then talk about some of the upcoming decisions still yet to be made from the Duke basketball team when we come back. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Incredible stuff being offered right now by FanDuel. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many different ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, JJ Jackson here with Josh Cox today on Locked On Blue Devils, talking about the end of the season for Duke and some of these decisions that are being made. We've got Knueppel declaring for the NBA draft, Caleb Foster coming back for his junior season. We expect Cooper Flagg and Khaman Maluach to make draft declarations as well, Josh. Those guys seem bound for stardom at the next level.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these are, inevitable things. I would say that Khan and Cooper and Khaman are, not questions about whether they were going to go. I think the questions are a little bit below the surface there of some of the other guys. And that's what, everyone's kind of waiting on, and it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I would assume, I don't know who's going to be next, but maybe it's later today when this podcast gets released. I have no idea, but by the time you're listening or watching this, it's been Khaman Maluach's day, or it's been Cooper Flagg's day. But, kudos to these guys. Both of those guys, and Cooper and Khaman, came to Durham for this one season. Like, it was a known fact, leading into this. And, people talk about, well, what about NIL dollars and what about this and that? And, if you do the math out, number one, the race to the NBA is not a race for your rookie contract. The race to the NBA is a race to your second contract, which is where you can begin to maximize your money.
Yep.
And you cannot blame anyone for getting there quickly. It's part of the reason why Cooper is probably the reason why Cooper ended up reclassifying and coming to Duke a year early. It was not to come to Duke a year early. It was because he wanted to get into the NBA a year early, to get his second contract a year early, because who knows what can happen, man. Life could happen, and injuries could happen, and things could happen. And so it's a no-brainer for those guys. It never was a question. Jon Scheyer was asked about it a week or so ago on, have you had a conversation with Cooper Flagg about his future? And John's answer was no. There is no conversation to be had. He's the number one overall pick in the NBA draft. He's going to the NBA draft. And so, Duke fans that want to, get in there, different Facebook groups or different Twitter conversations about it, just celebrate it. It's what these guys are. They're forever a part of the Duke family and the current climate of Duke University, or of college athletics. And let's just celebrate it. And so two guys in Khaman Maluach and Cooper Flagg that had incredible seasons. Obviously, Cooper's a little bit more of a finished product, and we kind of know what he's going to be. Khaman is a wild card. Duke fans could be looking at Khaman Maluach 3 to 5 years from now going he's one of the top 5 to 7 players in the NBA right now. We had no idea he was going to be that good when he was in Durham. So just enjoy the ride and follow these guys to the next level, right? That's what you and I do.
Yeah, and I was talking about Cooper Flagg specifically, or thinking at least, not every school gets number one draft picks, and yet how fortunate Duke is to have another one walk through, and you just continue to kind of be able to sell the pitches that you're making to future recruits. Another one, another number one pick that we were able to kind of get there by coming to play at Duke, which is pretty awesome.
It's like when you get your first job, whether you got a job when you were in high school or, fresh out of college, whatever it is, typically whatever that first job is not going to be your career job forever. And it's the quicker that Chick-fil-A, let's use Chick-fil-A, can realize that the high school kid that comes to Chick-fil-A is probably going to go somewhere else to work for their career. And the quicker they can become understanding of that and help empower that employee to move on to whatever it is they're going to do for their career, the better off everybody is. And Duke has really become that. Hey, we understand that this is, even if you stay all 4 years, still a temporary stop on your journey to being a professional in whatever it may be, whether it be sports and basketball, or whether it be whatever you do with your Duke degree. And it's coming to grips with that and embracing that, and just whether it's one season or whether it's 4 years, it's let's be awesome for these guys for however long they're on campus, and let's propel them to whatever's next. And I believe Jon Scheyer, and I would say Coach K previously in the one and done era, embrace that. And I think Duke does that at an elite level.
Yeah, and it's a reason why we were able to get these top recruiting classes year after year after year, and we've seen the success that comes along with it. I know that people want to see it ultimately culminate in a national championship. Josh and I do as well. It's just really hard to do that. Only one team gets to celebrate it all at the end of the season. Finally, we've got a couple of more decisions with guys that likely aren't heading to the NBA, but there's still kind of a question mark as to what next season brings for them, like where they'll be playing basketball, whether it be at Duke, whether it be elsewhere, or taking the professional route. When you think about guys like Isaiah Evans and Tyrese Proctor, those are the biggest question marks left, right?
Yeah, definitely biggest question marks. And you have two different stories there. You have the fourth season of Tyrese Proctor, of like the last 2 years, while they were radically different for Tyrese, the one thing that was the same is in the final game of the season, what wound up being the final game of the season in the tournament, Tyrese had rough games, right? He ended both seasons not playing at the level he wanted to play. And is that motivation for him to say, like, I'm coming back, and whether we win the national title next year or not, I want to make sure my last game in a Duke uniform is a game that I'm going to remember and I'm going to, be able to hang my hat on, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I think there's that. And then for Isaiah, it's a matter of, like, being the focal point of the Duke offense and having J.J. Redick type plays run for you to get open to shoot threes, having two-man game running with probably both boozers, right?
Yeah.
To get you open, and all those. I think that's the question Isaiah's got to answer. I'm assuming with NIL budgets at other places, where they are, there may be another school out there that might be willing to give Isaiah maybe a little bit more money than what he's getting at Duke. I don't know that. I don't have any insider information there. But the question is, do you want to be a Duke guy?
Yeah.
And, do you want that sophomore season at Duke? And we'll see. So that's interesting. And then I think, not quite as publicized, you do have the Malik Brown, Pat Gongba. You'd like to see something from those guys, like a thumbs up, see you next year, Duke fans or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Malik's got one more year of eligibility. We all saw the potential of Pat Gongba.
Yeah.
Like the fact that guy can be a game changer.
Well, just depth in the front court is so big, man. I mean, from injuries that we saw throughout the year, your front court players more prone to be in foul trouble and things like that when you get in games. So you want to be able to have experienced guys or just quality guys that you could turn to in those moments.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got some decisions remaining, and I know Duke fans are probably following Twitter or Instagram pretty quickly or pretty, intensely, and maybe turning on some notifications there to see what happens. But, at the end of the day, it's going to all shake out. And we do know this, man. If you plan for the worst, first of all, if you plan for the worst, anything that's better than that is a bonus.
Right.
But if you plan for the worst and you understand in this climate, if things don't fall Duke's way in some of these, there is the portal out there. And I know you don't want to build your whole roster around it, but Duke found some incredible success this year in the portal. And that's still something that's out there. And if worst case scenario, I believe Jon Scheyer and his team of coaches have shown they can go out in the portal and get it done.
Yeah. Let's see it all come together. It's going to be awesome. How can people support you, Josh?
Yeah, man. So Duke basketball wise at Duke Report, obviously Duke football as well. Spring games this Saturday at Wallace Wade. That's at Duke FB Talk, but would love, follow on Twitter or whatever there. And, YouTube is obviously good as well, but appreciate the support that all of the listeners and viewers give to Locked On for JJ. And then if we get some spillover to us, we also appreciate that as well.
Great to see you, man. We'll do this again soon. Okay.
Have a good one, JJ. We'll see you.
All right. That's Josh Cox joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. And yeah, he's in the same boat as all of us, as you and I are. He's trying to figure out what are these next roster decisions and moves that's going to happen for Duke basketball. That'll do it for today's show. Thanks so much for your support. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast feed, leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Your support means so much to us here on Locked On Blue Devils. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.